Good morning, America. Hope you had a great weekend. We've got a lot of information to cover. A lot happened over the weekend, and we're going to continue really focusing on how to work with revenue officers in detail. So we were talking about the last week. We talked about really all the things a revenue officer can do, the tools in their toolkit, the going as far as to leveraging vendors, padlocking businesses. They can do a lot of damage. So you need to address any case with a revenue officer. And that's what we're going to focus on today: is the positive aspects. How do you deal with them? How do you resolve the case? And tips and tricks of the trade. But we'll be back shortly after this break. So thank you for watching again, live or on broadcast. And I hope this is another informative session for you here at Taxes Made Easy on the smartmoneyculture.tv. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. We've got a lot of news to cover, and so I'm just going to dive right into it. Um, First of all, big news out there is that the Congress, the House and Senate, passed the budget last minute and inverted the threat of a government shutdown. It's an election year, and nobody wants to do it. So what do? They're just kicking the can down the road, continue to spend at their current rates. Again, there's a lot of criticism going back and forth, but we cannot continue to spend ourselves into oblivion. That's my opinion. It's estimated that again, nobody's going to follow this budget for 10 years, but if we continue on the current spending plan, it will add $52 trillion to our national debt. So if you look at the debt right now, it's currently, I'm going to pull this up real quick for you. It's at 34 going on 35 trillion. So every 100 days, we're adding another $1 trillion to the US debt. The biggest problem with that? Inflation. So it causes all kinds, it's going to cause inflation to continue to rise, which will cause interest rates to continue to rise. And the problem being, as we talked about last week, when you have housing prices that are already high, and you already have everything already costs a lot of money, when you have high inflation, it really kills the middle and the lower economic classes. So people that are struggling on the edge, these are the people that are being forced into homelessness. I've talked to people that had jobs, had families, that were forced into homelessness because things were just priced out of their reach. What are they going to do? If it's a choice between having a roof and feeding your kids, what do you do? So the next article is another, this one's scary. And this is a sign of how inflation and the market distortions that are going on in our economy are affecting real people. So in California, and it's not just California, prices are going up everywhere for insurance. So people don't think of as insurance as a huge concern, but insurance is one of those things that's been hit. It's been hit really hard by inflation because most of the tweaks and the government doing this and that, someone has to pay the bill. There's no free lunch. And when the people that usually get stuck with the costs are the insurers behind the scenes. So if you haven't noticed your car insurance going up, homeowners insurance going up, health insurance going up, it's because everything is more expensive and the people covering the final costs, especially for catastrophic issues. And again, that's when an insurer covers the entire, a huge segment of the population. So they get the catastrophic cases, they get the worst case scenarios. And instead of looking to contain costs, too often the government just looks to pass the buck and put it on businesses and corporations rather than making common sense changes in the law that will help lower costs. So this article is from the Epic Times. State Farm, the biggest insurer of home insurance in California, is pulling out. They're not completely out of the market yet, but they are dropping 72,000 policies across California. So approximately 30,000 homes, 42,000 commercial apartment policies, and again, they write 7.8 billion in premiums. So again, the costs are going through the roof, and things are too expensive in California, and the California government is not moving to address these issues. So how does this affect people? It's your home. I talked to someone last week that couldn't afford homeowners insurance. You can't sell your home. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but from what I understand, if you can't get homeowners insurance, any mortgage company is not going to sign on to a mortgage where the home is not protected by insurance. That's why homeowners insurance just usually gets wrapped up into your escrow and it's just paid with your monthly payments. Because they want to make sure that there's homeowners insurance. If there's a fire, if there's a flood, if something happens and the home is destroyed, the insurer or the mortgage company is the one that eats the entire loss. And when you could say, look, they're giant corporations, they can afford that. Well, up to a point. Again, for State Farm to leave the most populous state in the country and cancel, $7 billion worth of business says something. And so the fix is they now have a government program in California, the FAIR Act, that people can go to and try to get homeowners insurance. The problem is that's frequently more expensive than the private insurers. So with healthcare and health insurance, private insurance now is a lot more expensive than it used to be. The cost of everything has gone up. But if you go to find private health, just straight health insurance, it's through the roof. And again, in the more expensive states, it's even more ridiculous. So I see people easily, if they have private insurance, $1,000 to $1,500 a month, easy, especially if you have a family. And so you get forced onto state programs where they're highly subsidized for the poor, but then the cost for your middle class, this is where it really hits the middle class, is so high that they can't afford it. So again, that's a huge, huge danger sign if you have people that can't afford to stay on top of their home insurance, and it's going to affect the real estate market that's already been hammered, that's already struggling in a big way. So this is not good news. So that's something to be very aware of how interest and rising. The FAIR plan is what the plan is in California. So California is trying to make some changes to address these concerns, but we know, I would not expect California to move quick enough, as I believe there's already been seven of the top insurers have already left California, and State Farm leaving as well is a huge blow to the market there. Last big piece of news, and I've kind of hammered on it, kind of really talked about this, but we got some good numbers. This is directly from IRS, and again, they're putting out these news releases because it is important. I'm going to go ahead and share this article. This is directly from irs.gov newsroom. So if you pull up and you just type in news, here's a little click for news. This is where I go. You can look at the daily news. So again, reminder, if you're overseas, you have to file by June 17th. etc. Some of the stuff we've already talked about. But again, this is a big one, the employee retention credit for business owners. If you have filed for the ERC, not saying you have to, but they're already bragging that they've saved, quote unquote, $1 billion since starting their collections efforts or enforcement efforts when it comes to the ERC. The voluntary disclosure program, where you could, and these are just the highlights, where you could sit there and voluntarily say, I want to withdraw from the program, but I already received the money, and you only have to pay back 80% of it. And you don't have to pay it up front, you can do it in payments, but that started last Friday, which is why I've been hammering on this. You can still withdraw, do what's called a normal withdrawal. You say, okay, no harm, no foul, I'm going to withdraw my application. And you can only do that if you haven't received the money yet. And then they are looking to investigate more. So just by the numbers, by the special ERC voluntary program, and I'm going to make this bigger. Too big. There we go. 225 million from over 500 taxpayers, and they also have another 800 submissions still being processed, so that number is going to go up. So a lot of people said, hey, I'll take that deal and get this knocked out. Well, this doesn't sound like a lot, because these are businesses, a lot of them that have questionable, they're taking advantage of the ERC voluntary disclosure program. Withdrawal, you had 1,800 withdrawal. That's 251 million in savings. And then they're planning on saving another 572 by sending out letters and starting audits on 12,000 different businesses. That's a big number. It's not all of them, but that's a huge number, and they're not done. So again, this is going to lead to a lot of audit work, a lot of audit claims that these were done incorrectly, and this is going to end up with a lot of businesses owing hundreds of thousands to the IRS. So again, they might bring back the voluntary disclosure program. Who knows? Depends on Congress. And then you still have the special withdrawal program. But this is something, again, they issued 12,000. This is the initial round. This is one thing that costs money. So this covers tax year 2020. So the initial round of 12,000 is just for 2020. And believe me, they're probably going to do more rounds of letters. And then they're going to target 2021. So they're auditing to come after this. They're going after the promoters, the people that were advertising. It's kind of funny. IRS saw what was happening. They set up this law. They put limits on CPAs doing this instead of letting CPAs benefit from doing this work. Of course, a whole little cottage industry of promoters popped up to get this done for people and take advantage of the law, but now IRS is clawing it back. And then criminal investigations. So again, if you are not forthright with them, they've already started 396 criminal cases worth about $3 billion. Again, this has been since February. Pretty much the last year. You already had 25 investigations with federal charges, 12 convictions, and they're not looking. If you notice, there's only 25 that have resulted in federal charges, but 386 criminal cases. What they're looking for is anybody that did this fraudulently, that had intent to do this, and they want people to settle. They want the money. They don't care so much about pursuing criminal prosecution, but this is a huge deal, because just facing this, you can't attack. This is beyond a tax attorney. When you go to criminal investigations, you have to hire a white collar defense attorney, and they're expensive because they are very important and do an excellent job. Because you're in a very bad way if you end up with a criminal case. Now, this is out of thousands and thousands of letters. This number probably won't go up, the number of criminal cases per year. It's just because they're overwhelmed. And the process is so in depth. But again, they are continuing to it, but the audits are going to go up dramatically as they train and prepare staff. Moratorium on new claims just keeps going. We don't know when they're going to lift that, if they're going to lift that. Eventually, these claims that were filed based on the law at the time. And then, where was it? One of the things that it talked about is for new claims, if you're still going to file a claim, you have until April 15th to file your claim. Why April 15th? Because you can only get a refund for the last 3 years unless Congress acts to change that. So that's only 21 days from now. So that's not a long time. And if you file a 2020 return after that date and you do a refund, you're just not going to get it because you're past the statute of limitations. If you can't snooze on these and still get the refunds. So one idea is to have Congress extend that. Is Congress likely to do that since they're trying to claw back every penny they can from this? No, I don't think they're likely to do that. If anything, they're focused on cleaning up the mess that, again, by giving another freebie, and that way more people used it than they anticipated, or I don't know why they're trying to claw all this money back. Just because the budget's so tight, there could be a plethora of reasons, but it's going to hurt people. It is hurting people, and it is hurting businesses. So give us a call if you have any questions, and 520-485-7371. I didn't realize I just went right through that last break. This is important. If you missed what I was talking about, it's just going through the ERC program as being just a general theme is that they're going after that tooth and nail. They're going to fight this, and again, they're expanding the audits, they're expanding the investigations here. So be very careful. If you have questions, get good advice, get good help, and get good information. So we're going to pivot now to focus on revenue officers and collections. So last Friday afternoon, it was a little bit scary talking about all the things revenue officers can do. It's just, don't play around with them. They can issue arrest warrants if it goes beyond the second summons, which is pretty bad. I'm not blowing off the letters, I'm blowing off official summons. And some people get furious when the IRS issues subpoenas to a bank for bank records. They can do that. If you don't disclose, if you don't cooperate voluntarily, they have a lot of power at their disposal. Just going to share one last story. Normally they don't have to go this far. Normally businesses get shut down when they levy, when they lien, when they go after businesses. I had someone that tried to hire us. And again, I know I've shared this story before, but when he called in, he was already into the seizure process. So for revenue officers to actually seize assets, which is very rare, or seize homes, which I've seen happen. Again, it's when someone just ignores the IRS, ignores their attorneys, ignores everybody, and puts their head in the sand. Again, you have to deal with this head on. If it's overwhelming, Talk to someone that can help you walk through the process and give you peace of mind. It makes such a difference dealing with this head on rather than hiding. And whoever you're talking, whoever you're hiding, they shouldn't be scaring you like crazy. They should be working with you to give you peace of mind. So I'm doing the opposite of that right now, but just want you to be aware of how bad things can be. When I called this Reverend officer, he had already sent a request to legal, IRS legal, which is their attorneys, and they need permission. Legal's going to go in, they're going to review and make sure there aren't any issues, that they're not going to get sued for seizing property, because this is when people can turn around and sue the IRS for improperly pursuing a case. When the IRS legal department authorizes the seizure of property and it comes back from their attorneys, the revenue officers have to wait months for legal to authorize this. But once they do, all gloves are off. So in this case, the guy had a car lot and he had cars there on consignment. And going back and forth between the revenue officer and this gentleman, I had asked him, did you provide this information to the revenue officer? He's like, well, I told him, but I haven't provided the documents. I said, those aren't your vehicles. Can the IRS come in and seize somebody else's vehicles? Yeah, if they're on someone's property and they refuse to provide proof. So because he ignored and he had other companies that he had hired, probably played the same game. This is the worst thing you can do is jump from company to company. Trust me, I've had plenty of people come and hire us that they had a bad experience with someone else and they need someone to take charge of the case and do it right. Not a problem. I have had people fire me because they didn't want to listen. They didn't want to tackle the issue, and their case kept getting worse. Usually when they fire me because of that, I'm like, good riddance. Good luck. You're not listening to me. You're probably not going to listen to the next person either. And it's not going to help them. It's really kind of sad and frustrating when, the saying you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Doesn't happen often. It happens rarely, because when I first talk to people, I'm like, look, main thing is communication. Main thing is you got to listen to our advice. If not, why are you hiring us? Doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, and I told him to file for business bankruptcy because the revenue officer was ready. He already had a fleet of tow trucks ready to go. And he said, I have a fleet of tow trucks and bolt cutters. I'm going to go on that lot and haul every car off of that lot. His goal was to force him out of business because he wasn't complying. So this is where we get to the compliance part. Now, when we were talking last Friday about a 9297, this is a formal list. And you don't get these from collections. They'll give you a list of things that they need, but it can change from person to person. With the 9297 form, it is nice. One, it's not nice to get the letter, but when you get it, it lays out, this is what I want. Doesn't mean they won't ask for more information, but it's clear. You get a very concise list. This is everything I need you to do. Now, it usually comes with a 30-day deadline. And once you blow past that deadline, that's when collections will start. If they haven't started already, they don't have to wait for that. If you've already been issued the notice of intent to levy and then the final notice of intent to levy, they can start levying you and often do. But once you start engaging with the revenue officer and they send you that 9297 letter, that's your roadmap. It tells you exactly what you need to do. So when I get onto a case and there's already a revenue officer signed, that's one of my first questions is, have you issued a 9297? Great. What's on it? Let's address that. Let's be proactive. Let's not focus on how my client might have ignored the case or not done things right. Let's get this moving forward. Let's resolve this case. And that's music to a revenue officer's ears, but a lot of times they're they don't trust it. They don't believe it till they see it happening. And I hate to say it, if you have someone that's just kicking the can down the road, filing frivolous motions, all they're doing is annoying the revenue officer. And when he finally gets at you, it's going to be with knives drawn. I've had plenty of people that came to me, they didn't like who their previous representative, things were going bad, they didn't know why. And this is exactly what was happening, that the representative wasn't maintaining good communication with the client. They didn't understand that they needed to be responding to the revenue officer and showing forward progress to prevent collection actions. Now, forward progress doesn't mean I can do a little bit here and a little bit there just to delay it. You have to be actively working to resolve the case. So the number one thing, and this is, again, it's not, once you understand it's not rocket science, but the number one things that they're asking for is, one, file your tax returns. Get them in. Stop playing around. If you have CPAs that are overwhelmed, overloaded, just not getting to it, not responding, fire them. They can be great CPAs, but if they're not taking care of your work, and the holdup is the CPA, not you, you need to move on. You need to get someone else that can get tax returns done, and there are plenty of CPAs, I know plenty of excellent CPAs that will get them done quickly. And I don't get a penny from this. When I refer people out, I don't get any direct monies for any referrals that I give out. So get those returns done. If they're not perfect, that's okay. Because guess what you can do if they're not perfect? Then you can take the time, you can figure it out and amend the return. But if you're waiting 6 months or longer, if it's approaching October 15th and you still don't have your return ready to go, first of all, you need to give your CPA a kick in the butt. Tell them to have it done by the deadline. And if it's missing stuff or information, amend it later. Second of all, though, if it's holding up a resolution and your CPA just isn't, or tax preparer just isn't doing it, you need someone else. So again, it's a little bit of hard facts, but I have a client who sat around for 9 months trying to work with their old CPA, and we kept telling them, we need this. And when the hammer fell, she had to go get her documents. She finally listened, went and got all of her documents from her current CPA, took it to a new CPA. Now, to be fair to the old CPA, she didn't have everything. So this lit a fire under the client as well to get finish putting things together. And we got stuff filed, but it was imperfect. It wasn't complete. And we're going to go back. We're doing all the bookkeeping going backwards, and we're going to amend those returns to save her more money. But again, then we need to get something filed. And CPAs and tax preparers, they don't like to file imperfect returns, but there's nothing illegal or unethical about it. You just file them based on the best information you have. And when you have a revenue officer on your case, it's time to stop playing around. Let's get those filed. And same thing if you're heading into collections with IRS collections, let's get the returns filed. If you don't have the best information, neither do they. Sometimes we're just getting it done. Again, which runs very counter to most CPAs and tax professionals or tax preparers. They want to have all the I's dotted, T's crossed. They want to have all that information, and when they have incomplete information, it makes some of them very nervous. But then you get your more experienced CPAs and people that are willing to work with people in distress. We can get those returns done and do them quickly. Just a little bit of an explanation, and again, I can sound a little harsh towards some CPAs. A lot of CPAs, they don't like the mess. If you're in trouble and you're not listening and you're not filing your estimated tax payments, they don't want to deal with you. They like the easy cases where everybody has their books done, they've done it, they put it together, and they don't normally get paid extra to deal with all this hassle when someone doesn't have their act together. So I've talked to plenty of CPAs that were like, I don't have any referrals for you because I don't keep those kinds of clients. They can be, if they're good enough, they can be very more choosy about the clients they keep. And it depends on, someone's the way they run their business, whether or not they do that, and they just focus on a good stable of higher end clients rather than I want to help most people that come through my door. I've known plenty of CPAs that were very busy, but they wanted to help people, and not to denigrate those other CPAs that are busier. They're busier because they're good, and because they're good, they can be choosy and not deal with problem clients. So don't get that label. If you get someone that's good, learn from it, get your book straightened out. So moving forward, you don't have that issue. I've talked about that more than I plan to. Estimated tax payments is the other half of that. So filing compliance, payment compliance. So filing, that you just need it within the last 6 years. You need to have all your returns filed. You just have to get them all done. You have to, if you had any filing or income for those years, you have to get them filed. Payment compliance, and I've hammered at this, I'm repeating myself because it's important. In the current year or current tax period, you can't owe moving forward. So you have to have all that filed, or you have to be making those regular payments. And it's going to become even more important in the coming year because they changed the penalty from 0.5% to 8%. So you're going to get smacked with heavier penalties. They're not going to consider you as compliant and ready for a resolution. So they will look at the back taxes. And even if you're going to owe for 2024, we're already in March. The later we get in the year, the harder it is to get caught up for the year. And they understand that. So if nothing else, start now. Start making those payments now. So that way you can get on top of this. And so they can at least say, okay, they can go to the manager. Yes, they're behind for this year, but they have 3 months where they've been paying every single month and getting those estimated tax payments in. These are the two biggest problems with getting a case resolved. Once they have that, once we show payment compliance, filing compliance, then we can move to address everything else. People that aren't compliant, they aren't showing that they're not going to owe again. There's no reason negotiating with the IRS. I mean, we do. Trust me, we do. But if you're not doing that and you continue to owe money, they're just going to proceed directly to levy actions. They're going to ratchet things up, and it's going to be painful. So once you have that in place, once you show compliance, and again, we should be working on all of this at the same time. Like I said, the 9297 has a list. Some of them are more important. So sometimes if someone's struggling, I will focus first and foremost on compliance, but we should be working on everything on the list. Now, are there some things on the list that we can say, no, you don't really need that? We can push back on some of it, but most of the time, they don't do that too much. But it's important to respond to that 9297, get those documents in. And once you get them in, the follow-up is so key. So even though you submit documents to the IRS, you submit them to the revenue officer, they have to review and process them, and then they're going to have questions, and then this is why you have to go back. And the problem is revenue officers are overwhelmed. When I say that they're overwhelmed, again, you could get the 92.7, you can send documents, but it's like the military term, hurry up and wait. You have to be on them, you have to be on them, you have to be on them. You have to be showing them that you're ready to go, and then wait on them. I've had revenue officers reassigned in the middle of cases. I've had people that I just lost contact with. They don't respond for a few months. So if you have someone that's not responding as a revenue officer, what do? You call collections. You see if they're still on the case. If they're still assigned to the case, collections can tell who's assigned to the case. That's where you have the group secretary, the group manager. You can go up and down a number from there, one digit up and down based on their phone number, to leave messages with other revenue officers. You can use all of these tricks to get a response. but sometimes they're out on vacation. Big thing that's been happening is that they get sent out on retraining. They're doing a lot of training right now because they're trying to add more people and more personnel to the IRS. So by drastically adding the number of people to collections, again, your more experienced people are getting pulled, getting promoted, they're getting sent elsewhere. So there's a lot of movement right now with the IRS. So when you have a revenue officer, you have to be finding this out, playing a little bit of detective to see what's going on with the case and what's happening with your revenue officer. Why aren't you hearing anything? And it can be months where you're following up on somebody. But again, you have to be proactive. You have to be hurrying up and then waiting on them. But again, following up regularly, making sure you have contact. If they appear out of the blue and then try to levy you, this is where you need to be able to say, hey, I've called you this day, this day, this day, this day. So keeping a record of when you called, you can send them faxes. Hey, it's been a couple months. I know you're busy, but if you could reach out to me, I'd appreciate it. And keep that fax confirmation notice. So having good records is absolutely key. We are coming up on a break, and I need to take this one. So we're going to wrap up on some final things with revenue officers after the break. And I hope this has been helpful. Again, very important because this can affect your business, your livelihood, and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back, everybody. Just need to take a drink after talking for probably 25 minutes or 35 minutes straight. I'm going to slow things down for this last section. And as far as once you get all the documents that they're requesting to the revenue officer, they might want more. They might need more information. There's times where they might ask for more information than required. So I've had a funny story. A lot of it is being strategic with your negotiations. I had one case where someone asked for 18 months worth of bank statements. It was a small case. I pulled a fast one where we eliminated ongoing payroll liability, and it was putting the guy in a non-collectible status. So the revenue officer was like, hey, I see what you're doing. It's legal. I can't exactly complain about it, but she didn't like it. So she goes, well, I want 18 months of bank statements. So I called the client up and I told him, well, this is what she's asking for. And he's like, can she go that far back? I'm like, well, I could fight her on it. Or we could do a document dump on it, get her exactly what she's asking for. And so I said, I bet you when we dump 200 pages worth of bank statements on her, she's not going to even look at them. She doesn't have that kind of time. She's not an auditor. She's not an accountant or forensic accountant. So we did. We sent her exactly what she asked for. And that saying, be careful what you ask for. So I got the next call from her. She said, oh, well, this is a lot of stuff. I said, well, yeah, if you asked for it. She goes, well, can you or your staff, when you have time, go through it for me? I was like, if we get to it. We're not set up for that, but yeah, if we get to it, sure, we'll try. Never went through it. A couple weeks later, we got exactly what we wanted. It might have been 2 to 4 weeks later, but yeah. That was kind of funny. Sometimes it makes absolute sense to show that you're complying. You help them check off their boxes on that 9297 and everything else they need because they have to take the case to their manager to review. They can't just close out cases. They have to have it reviewed by their manager. And if you make it easy, all the boxes are ticked off or checked off. It makes it very easy for the revenue officer to close out your case. And when they see that it's heading a certain direction, that it's going to be resolved, it pays in spades to get the revenue officer on your side. And we're going to talk about this. So the revenue officer is going to be on the case until you set up an installment agreement, a hardship status, or hardship status, one of the two. Those are your two options with the revenue officer. You can file an offer in compromise through a revenue officer. But I prefer to always set up an installment agreement or a hardship status, and I'll tell you why. If anything goes under the radar, gets issued, it gets kicked back to collections, and it's not fully resolved, it is very hard to get anything removed once that offer status gets applied to your case, because then collections can't touch it. It's out of the revenue officer's hands. But if you're going to file an offer in compromise, you need to tell the revenue officer about it. And you can get it out of their hands, wait a few months, and then file the offer in compromise. But people try to do this where a revenue officer is on the case, and instead of working with the revenue officer, they try to get them off the case and shortcut it by just filing an offer right in the middle of working with the revenue officer. Bad idea. Why? Revenue officers have the power to pull a case back from the offer and compromise unit. So it's a bad strategy because, one, it shows them that you're not willing to work with them. You're willing to play games to kick the can down the road and not address this. And you can buy plenty of time when the ball is in their court, in their hands. You're following up with them and making sure, hey, you need to do this. I'm waiting on you. And you do it politely. I always tell them, look, I know you guys are overwhelmed. You're busy. But making sure the ball is in their court is very important. And you can buy just as much time by mailing in documents. If you have a huge stack of documents that they're requesting, the fax doesn't work. Okay, I mailed it to you. And then it has to go through them. It goes directly to them, and then you mail it to collections. This one, it takes a long time. But they're overwhelmed. It'll take them months, at least a month or so, to get to it. Unless it's something small that you can just fax in. But it's always good to have the revenue officer on your side. So this is why I highly recommend, if your case is going there, if you have a serious issue, get good help beforehand. It can save you so much stress, so much headache. You don't have to see what a revenue officer is capable of, because you're going to have your case resolved well before then. I can't tell you how many times we got ahead of a case. Boom, 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 the revenue officer came on board. Oh, you're already working on this stuff. Well, we know what you need. We know, we have experience. We know what needs to be done. And when they see someone being proactive, you're making their job easier. Why would we want the revenue officer's job to be easier? Because the quicker we resolve the case, the less collections actions they have to take, the less fighting there is over the case, and then they can focus on their more difficult cases. You don't want to be a difficult taxpayer. In the end, it doesn't really help you. It just makes things harder and more painful. And there's another reason for this too. Revenue officers are usually they have a lot of experience. They're very experienced. And if they can't do something, they usually know who is available. So they can do abatements. Not a full 843 abatement, but they can do first-time abatements. I have seen them remove balances. If you had payments that weren't applied correctly, they can make adjustments on that, or they have been able to in the past. You can ask them other questions, thorny questions, and I've had plenty of cases where I said, look, what about this issue? What about this issue? We need someone in the IRS to help with this. And if they don't do it, or they can't do it, they usually know who can, and they can usually give you some good information. So, again, very helpful to get this stuff taken care of with the revenue officer's help rather than fighting them. So having a good rapport, having a good negotiation strategy where it absolutely helps to establish that rapport, to work with somebody, and again, it can make or break a case. I had one case where I took over for somebody. They were playing games, and it was someone had quit or been terminated. I was brought in as a replacement. and prior, there was an enrolled agent that I replaced, had been kicking the can down the road with CDP hearings, with other things, just not taking this seriously. And again, it was very, very frustrating to the IRS, to the revenue officer. So I came on board. I called. I said, "What do you need? Here's some documents. I try to be very proactive about it." I said, "Look, I'm a new representative. I'm not going to play the same games that the previous person was playing." He didn't respond. He waited till the time was up and then dropped the hammer. Now, I blew him up because I was calling him. He didn't respond. I sent him letters, faxes. He didn't respond. And he thought he was justified because the previous representative was playing games. I said, I know what the previous representative was doing. That's not how I do things. And because he was the one that ignored me, and I was able to show that, all of a sudden, now the burden's on him. So I went to his manager. I even went to the regional manager and said, "Look, this guy blew me off. This is where he didn't follow his policies and procedures. I'm trying to resolve the case, and he won't respond. He's letting his emotions get in the way instead of being more professional and dealing with this." And emotions do get involved. So again, claiming that everybody needs to be a professional. I absolutely try to have their emotions get involved by coming off as we're being productive, we're being helpful, and getting those results for our clients. Now, if someone, a revenue officer, is being too aggressive, trust me, I'll call them out. But there's a way to do it where you don't embarrass them, you don't shove it in their face, because then you just create an enemy, not a partner. And so you want to get them as a partner working for you. And trust me, the things I've been able to get done through a revenue officer when they're working for us and not against us is huge. I just had a case, it was a payroll case. I told the clients this wouldn't happen. But the revenue officer that I had worked with before, he knew me, was a local revenue officer, put them in a non-collectible status with payroll liability. Doesn't normally happen. Better result than I even expected. Because I've worked with that revenue officer before, I have a reputation for being proactive and working with them, and it can pay dividends in spades. So again, how you approach a case matters. They're people, they have emotions. You have to understand that they're trained to come get the money and that the taxpayers have broken the law. Sometimes it's just very difficult situations. They're not very sympathetic to a lot of what's going on. But if you can spin a story that makes sense and show, look, they're trying to change things, they're trying to turn things around. They're very sympathetic to people that are working towards resolving the case and doing it successfully. So again, very key is having a good negotiation and strategy working with revenue officers. And I've had plenty of conversations where the client was crying. They were very emotional. They wanted to sit there, accuse the revenue officer of everything under the sun. I said, "Hey, this isn't helpful." And this is usually when the revenue officer insists on having a client conversation. And I'm the mediator. I'm the one between them saying, "Let's calm down here. Let's calm down here. Let's be productive. Let's be proactive. Let's move this case forward. Let's get you what you need to the revenue officer and client. Let's answer your questions, but let's dial things down because it's not being helpful." Getting mad, and it might make you feel better to get mad and yell and scream at the IRS. There's a way to do it, and do it quietly. That's much more effective. When you know they're wrong and they know that they're treading on thin ice, going to their manager is absolutely the way. But again, whenever I appeal something to a manager, I am more polite afterwards. Because even I want to develop that good relationship, and I want to show them that, look, I'm looking to be professional and handle this in the right way. rather than to cause trouble and create enemies, because that doesn't help me in the future with other clients, and it doesn't help in the current case. So again, if you have questions, again, that's my approach. I've had a lot of success with it. I can't tell you how many revenue officers have come out and even mentioned to my clients, I don't know why people hire someone like you. They think we just take their money and run, or mess up a case, which there's plenty of people that do just that. But when I start working with them and they see the value that I bring to the table, and they say, oh, okay, I can get this case wrapped up. I don't have to worry about this. This guy is working with the clients to get them to where they need to be. And even if clients aren't, I can usually buy more time for them. But eventually, just buying time, I hate just buying time because it doesn't solve the case. And it just gives the revenue officer more ammunition for when the hammer drops. They can justify it, saying, like, they blew me off for this long through time. They kept telling their attorney they would do A, B, and C. They never did it. And so I took drastic action because they weren't responding. So get ahead of this. Be informed. Get a good representative. Check us out online. Check our reviews. Make sure you're talking to someone that's actually going to help you. And again, if you're not getting good advice, you're not sure about what's happening, get a second opinion. There's times I've even told my own clients, look this up. I had somebody I called in last Friday, and she had a debt from early 2000s. I said, I'm not even going to hire you on as a client because I think the debt's already expired. It's so old. And I explained to her the statute. So again, if someone's willing to give you some free information, good advice, and not charge you every time you blink, that's someone that's going to help you out. And again, that's what you need to make sure that your livelihood is protected, that your family is safe, that you can meet the bills and put food on your table for your family. Again, the security and the peace of mind that we can provide is why we do what we do. It's my why for why I do tax law. Again, it sounds so boring, tax law, but when you have people crying, when you have people mad and frustrated, and you can redirect those energies to something positive and productive, it can make all the difference. So again, call us if you have any questions. Look us up online, guardiantaxlaw.com. Get your questions answered. Get the help you need, because these are very serious situations that we deal with on a regular basis. And thank you for watching here live or on rebroadcast here at smartmoneyculture.tv. And we'll be hitting other topics throughout the week. And hope you have a wonderful day out there.